So today in the mock discussion, what exactly are the main findings of this? If I'm talking only about the verbal, so verbal may everyone struggle with one specific topic, and that was the critical reasoning. Even in the reading comprehension, what we saw was whenever there is a critical reasoning question, everyone was marking it wrong. Now, in all the IQ tests, what we see usually is most difficult questions. I mean to say that the questions which carries you from the 90 percentile to the 99 plus percentile always comes from the critical reasoning. I'm talking about the reading comprehension questions. So in the reading comprehension questions, the most difficult questions would always be coming from the critical reasoning. Now, even in the critical reasoning, there are some topics which always, most of the people will always mark it wrong. Now, what are these topics? There are two types of testing basically we use. One thing we call it as computer-based testing, and one thing we call it as computer adaptive testing. In the computer-based testing, is just like many of the IQ tests, just like my CUET or even in the CAT, there is a computer-based testing. So what exactly happens in the base testing is the questions are actually linearly placed. That is, if you attempt one question, it will move to the second and third and on. So basically, there is no adaptivity attached to the questions. But in computer adaptive testing, in adaptivity comes into play. Now, how does adaptivity comes into play? I will introduce you to a mathematical, a kind of a statistical model. We call it an item response theory. Now, this is just like a kind of a mathematical, more of a statistical model, in which what exactly we do is we define the different questions into different difficulty levels. And how we do it is we actually try to create a relation between the students, the performance or the attempts, and we try to relate it to the difficulty level. I'll give an example to you how we do it is, let's say, for example, there are 100 questions and we are giving it to some sample of students, let's say the sample of students is 50. So what exactly we do is, on the basis of the performance of the students, we actually divide the difficulty of a question into different categories. I'll give an example to you. Let's say 100 questions were given to the student, all the 50 students, and all the students, let's say, mark one question wrong. So that will come as a most difficulty level in this mathematical model. What will happen is, so 50 people performance will define the difficulty level of the questions in the set of 100 questions. So now some people, in some of the questions, 95% people will mark it correctly. In some question might be 80% people will mark it correctly. So on the basis of that, on the basis of the results we are getting, this model actually separates the whole thing and divides the whole 100 question into 100 difficulty levels. So what exactly in the adaptivity, what will happen is, let's say if a student is attempting a question 1, and let's say a person has marked it correctly or a person can mark it wrong. Now, if you're marking it correctly, it will take you to the more difficult question. More difficult questions, I will say call it D. Okay. Now, if you're marking it wrongly, the test will take you to a simpler question. So every time what will happen is, every time this thing is going to happen. So if you're marking it correctly, you will go to the more difficult question and you will go to the more simpler question. So in this way, the question set for the test will keep on adapting yourself. So now the question can be, why I'm talking about item response theory and what exactly is it related to the today mock analysis? See, what exactly this theory gives you is, it gives you actually a set of questions which people usually mark it from. And that actually creates a difference between a 90 percentile and a 99 plus percentile. So what are that topics? I'll tell you some of the topics in the CR which people are 99%, most of the students will mark it from. So how is it important for you? The importance is, let's say I am setting a paper and I am using this item response mathematical model. So I exactly know that if I have to create a difference between a 90 and 99 percentile student, I have to use these topics in which people are usually marking it from. What are that topics we are going to discuss? So आपको क्या करना है कि वो topics पे whenever you see that topics coming into the test, you have to be very careful. And if you mark it correctly, and usually एक IQ में टेस्ट में एक बेसिक फंडामेंटल यूज होता है कि जो चीज आपको बड़ी डिफिकल्ट लग रही होगी या दिख रही होगी, that would be very easy, and the vice versa. So what exactly will happen is the question may seem to you as very easy, but it would be very difficult in reality, and the vice versa point. I'll give an example to you. I'll give a maths example. I'm a maths person, so I'll give you maths example. The question can be like, let's say the question is, okay. The question is, let's say there's a quadratic equation, okay. The quadratic equation is there, and we say, what are the minimum roots of a quadratic equation? Now, right from the childhood of ours, right from my 6th standard to 7th standard, what we are being taught, quadratic means two roots. Quadratic means two roots. Now, in a way, we are actually a kind of a accustomed, or a kind of a, we say, we have a habit of marking the root 2. So answer will have 0, 1, 2, or might be minus 1. Now, 99% people will mark 2. Now, the point is, when you're talking about the minimum, the game changes actually. So, if in a quadratic equation, let's say, I'll give a simple graph so that you understand much more better. अगर कोई quadratic equation ऐसा जा रहा है तो roots 2 ही होगा. तो लेकिन क्या ऐसे सिचुएशन हो सकता है? Just one. ऐसा सिचुएशन भी हो सकता है. Let's say वो एक टच ही कर रहा. So the point what I'm trying to say is the question might look very easy to you कि quadratic का question है, roots की बात हो रहा है, and I know the answer. But just a word minimum addition will change the whole game. Now, in the same way, there are many questions which will look very difficult to you, just like in the reading comprehension that is played actually many of the times. And the answer would be very easy. Now, in the reading comprehension, what happens is all the students, when they're sitting on a paper, most of the people are perfectionists. So what they will do is they will try to understand each and every word of the reading comprehension. You don't need to do that. So what the point I'm saying is, a passage which is very difficult to understand, but if you go to the question, it would be asking a thing which is very easy to understand after reading a passage. So even getting a main idea without even going into each and every word or sentence meaning can also give you the right answer. So the point what I'm trying to say is, an IQ test when is set, it can be a tricks are always played that a thing looking very difficult can be very easy, and a thing looking very easy would be very difficult if you will apply your mind. So that's how the trick तो होना ही है. अब टेस्ट है 3 से 4 लाख लोग अगर अपीयर कर रहे हैं तो obviously trick होगा. So up right now what we'll do is, using this same item response theory model, I will move into what are the topics in the CR which most of the people mark it wrong. So I'll give you some of the topics so that you can consider that topics, and whenever you see a question from that topic, you must understand that this is a tricky question and you have to apply your full mind. Okay. The first family of questions is accept and the least addition in the questions. So the most difficult CR questions would have this actually belong to this family where it can be an assumption question, it can be a strengthen or a weaken question, and we'll have a word like accept or least. Now let me just show you what kind of a question that would be. So look at this question. Now this family of questions, which I call it accept or least, will question will have a kind of a loop है thinking का कि you have to, let's say the question will have something like that topics. I'll give an example here. Now this question, when I'm reading the question, the postal service is badly mismanaged. 30 years ago, any letter delivery used to cost 3 cents. Since then, the price has increased sevenfold with an actual decrease in the speed and the reliability of service. Now look at the question clearly, carefully. All of the following would tend to weaken the conclusion of the argument, and here comes the real game changer, or I would say it brings the difficulty level to the whole thing. Now, what exactly how it happens? It will have two kind of questions. Okay, one type of questions would be most of the questions which it will come would be from the assumption based family, strengthen or weaken, and it will have an addition of accept or least. Now, what exactly is the problem here? I'll give you an example. Now, if you're looking at this question only, now if I have to weaken the conclusion, so the first thing we have to do is to find a conclusion. Now, where is the conclusion in the question? The conclusion is there. This is the conclusion. The postal service is badly mismanaged. This is the conclusion. So this is what we are going to do is we have to weaken this conclusion. Okay. Now, what exactly the students do mistake is, see, even I've given this example beforehand, even where I talked about there's a difference between real life and a logical life. If in the real life I say we can accept, people usually consider this as an opposite of it. So what they will say, they will assume that we have to strengthen it. But in the logical world, when I say that we can accept, what I am saying is not weaken, and I am not talking about strengthening it. Are you able to understand what the point I'm making? The point I'm making is, in the real world, if I say we can, let's say the same question which we are looking right now, we can accept doesn't mean strengthen. In the logical world, when I say we can accept, what I'm talking about is which will not weaken. So what the point I'm making is, let's say if we have a line 0 to 5 minus 5. So most of the people will take the 5. If I say accept, will go to minus 5. But even 0 in the logical world is not 5. The point I'm saying is when there is an accept or released question, don't assume If it is a strengthening question and I put an except, it's not, it doesn't mean it's a weakening question, and the vice versa. So in the lot in most of the people, students, what they do, the mistake is they try to look in the answers, they try to find कि कौन सा इसमें और answer option is actually strengthening the conclusion. But actually the question is not talking about strengthening, it is talking about an answer which will actually not weaken it. So the point I'm making is this is a question which most of the people mark wrong. So whenever you see except or least in any question, be very attentive. This is a question specifically put to make make a differentiation. Okay. Now we'll talk about the second family. Even the must be true family questions are very tricky in nature. And many of the times the examiners usually use must be true questions. Why? Because the answers are mostly very close to each other. In the must be true type of a question in the critical reasoning, what we are supposed to do is, जो भी पैसेज बोल रहा है आपको वही सेम आंसर्स ही लिखना है. दैट इज you have to be in the scope of the passage or the boundaries set by the passage. And usually in the must be true questions, if we are setting up highly difficult questions, and examiners love to do that. Reason being, it is much more easier to devise a difficulty level question in a must be true kind of a family. And I'll give an example to you. Let's say if you have an assumption question and let's say this is the boundary of the passage, you can have an answer like this, out of scope even. But in the must be true questions, if you look at the plotting of the answers, they are very close to each other. So what exactly happens is, to an untrained mind, as a person who is not very fluent in critical reasoning, it will be very much difficult to choose the right answer. I'll give him the same, try to look at the passage which I given on the screen. Now, this question might seem very easy to you, but when you look at the answer choices, you will understand what kind of difficulty level this is. I'm just reading the question for you. Amazon sent some wooden gift packages last week. Last week, all of the shipments from Amazon that were sent out on Wednesday or later consisted entirely of the non-wooden gift packages. Now, Amazon sent 7 gift packages to Pantaloon last week. Take it as any name, Pantaloons or Megha or Ram, any name you can take. At least 2 of which were wooden gift packages. So Amazon sent, so it looks very easy. So if we are paraphrasing it, what we will show is, the first paraphrase you will have is, let's say we have a week from Sunday to Saturday, let's say. So after Monday, they have only sent, after Monday, after Wednesday, they have only sent non-wooden gift packages. And before that, they have sent it wooden gift packages, and let's make it as Wednesday. So this is a basic paraphrasing of the whole passage. Now, to a trained mind, people will do, I usually don't paraphrase. When I do any test or any kind of an IQ test, I don't paraphrase it. Paraphrasing, I'm usually doing it mentally. But if you are learning, if you have an untrained mind, so it's better to paraphrase, and that's why I've given the example of a paraphrase. The question is must be true, मतलब वो आंसर इस पैसेज की बाउंड्रीज के बीच में होना चाहिए. तो पहला देखते हैं, पहला ऑप्शन देखते हैं. At least one of the gift packages sent to Pantaloon last week was not wooden. So what is the answer? Can we, looking at the passage, can we say that? The only thing in the passage is at least 2 of which were wooden. So we are not sure about anything non-wooden. So this answer goes out. At least one of the wooden gift packages sent last week was not directed to Pantaloon. Even from the passage, I can't work out. The majority of gift packages sent to Pantaloon last week was sent on Wednesday or later. I have no idea. Wednesday was non-wood जा रहा है, तो ज़्यादा है कम है, I'm not. Majority है minority है, I'm not aware of it. Some of the gift packages, the D option, sent to Pantaloon last week was sent on Tuesday or the earlier. Now this is the right answer because we know at least two, one या दो wooden है और वो Tuesday से पहले ही जा सकते हैं. So this becomes the answer. The last, the E point, Pantaloon received a higher proportion of gift packages sent last week from Amazon than any other recipient. Obviously, I don't know. But this, to a trained mind, will look थोड़ा सा easy है, बड़ा easily कर दिया. लेकिन अनट्रेन माइंड के लिए मस्ट बी टू अगर डिफिकल्टी लेवल को हायर किया जाए तो डिफिकल्ट होता है बिकॉज मोस्ट ऑफ द आंसर्स आर वेरी मच क्लोज टू ईच अदर. सो दिस इज आल्सो वन ऑफ द फैमिली व्हिच एग्जामिनर्स, द पीपल हु सेट इन द पेपर्स, it's their favorite. If they're not making any difficult question, usually the must be true question is taken as one of the fodder. The next tricky question I'm going to talk about is an assumption, accept, and the extreme answer, this combination. Now, in this questions, the question will stand something like, which is on the screen. It says, from the time the town of XYD, DZAR, executed air toxin limitation on town industry, the number of sparrow species in town has risen. Same smoke toxin limitation should be executed in the town. It's very simple to understand, and everyone will consider it as a very simple passage. But when you look at the answer choices, it is a very tricky question. Whenever we use assumptions and accept, we are actually taking you to a territory which can have a very big scope. I mean to say, assumption as such is also a term which is not stated in the passage. And now, if I say assumptions and with a combination of accept, what exactly I'm doing is any choice, any answer can be a potential winner. Now, in these combinations, sometimes, many of the times we have seen in the IQ test is they also use an extreme answer option. Let's giving an example, which is on the screen. The first is the option. In most major towns, air toxin problems are caused almost entirely by the town industry. And this looks like a very big potential winner. Looks like a good answer. And this is an assumption which has been made. Now the B part, air toxin limitation of industry have a significant impact on the quality of the air. Yes, this is also an assumption in the passage. The third thing, the air toxin problems of other major towns are basically similar to those once suffered by the dash. Yes, this is an assumption. So an increase in the number of sparrow species in and around the city is desirable. Yes, assumption. And let's look at the last one. The increased sighting of sparrow species in and around dash town reflect an actual increase in the number of species in the area. Now, what exactly is happening here is all of the answer choices are very close to the right answer, and rather every answer looks like a correct option. But the combination here is, the trick here is a use of an extreme answer in one of the option choices. And when you look at the option A, there is a simple word which we say the entirely word, which makes the whole thing like the total problems were entirely caused by the town industry. And most of the times, I'm not saying every time, but most of the times extreme answers are wrong. So whenever you see assumption question with an accept point, with an accept in the answer, it's a very tricky question. Even if the passage might look like very easy, 2 lines, very easy to understand, pollution happened, some kind of a remedies were done, and why can't that remedies be executed? And it did very well, and why it shouldn't be executed at any other town? So everything looks very easy, and we can easily answer it. But when you look at the answer, every answer choice is actually an assumption which has been made in this passage. So a small word like entirely. So the combination of assumption, extreme, and the accept part actually is a very tricky part. And many of the IQ tests have used these kind of a question that we could also be using it to make I would say, differentiation between the toppers and the masses. One more, our favorite topic of the examiner is assumption-based questions. And in that, everyone is aware of a negation technique. Now, when exactly we use the negation technique? Negation technique is used in when we are left with 2 to 3 choices in the assumption-based questions. And if we have to finalize our answer, that is, we opt out of 2 options which might be very similar to each other or having the same kind of a meaning, examiners are very much aware. वो जानते हैं कि examiner की negation technique, how you use it. Most of the people will use a negation technique in a realistic way. I mean to say, when we talk about a negation technique in the real world, if I have to negate a sentence, I will just introduce not. But in the logical world, actually what I mean by negation is negating the logic, or you may also call it the meaning. So when I say negation of a statement, people usually, and students most of the time do this mistake, that they will negate the statement. हमें statement को negate नहीं करना है, या हम ये नहीं ढूंढ रहे हैं कि statement को negative statement क्या है. Trying to do is whatever the logic that some statement is making or the meaning it is making, we are actually negating the logic. Now I'll give you an example to you. Let's say in this class, I'll say the statement says there are 5 students in the class. अब एक negate करते हैं इसको. We'll say there are not 5 students in the class. 5 student नहीं हैं. If I say 5 student नहीं है, तो इसका मतलब क्या है कि 4 हैं, 3 हैं, कोई भी नहीं है, या 10 हैं, या 15 हैं. तो जहां भी मीनिंग में ambiguity आ गया, जहां भी whenever in the meaning of a statement or an option, you may have multiple answers, then you are on a wrong path. Whenever you are checking in the verbal, whenever in the IQ test you will have a verbal section, the ambiguity, or then you are on a wrong path. Your answer should be very, just like a numerical, it should be there. Just like if I say 2, it means 2. It cannot mean 3 or anything. But when they say subjectively, let's say I say, Ram is a good boy. Now, good can have subjectively any meaning. But if I put a parameter or a number to it, it means something. It means a set parameter. So the point I'm just trying to make is, this is also a very favorite topic of an examiner. They know that how you negate, and they know then how to critique. So whenever you're negating a statement in the assumption-based family questions and critical reasoning, always negate the logic or the meaning and not the statement. So then you will be having the right, you will be able to mark the right answer. When examiner is aware, they will use that trick against you. From our around the sample size, if you talk about, more than around 6,000 people have given a test, and that the total item response theory, when I talk about, there are many other things which came out, which I'll take in the next class. But these were the topics where we found that more than 95% people are marking it wrongly. So in that mathematical model, these topics, questions were always at the top difficulty level. Okay, so why it is top difficulty level? Model means when model is marking anything as a difficult question, it means the maximum people have done mistakes while attempting that question.